Okay, we're going to get started. I know quite a few of you have said that you will catch up with the recording later on, and that's completely fine. We thought that we will do a power hour at lunchtime and go over some of the lessons learned from the now viral video where Cloudflare employee Brittany Pietsch is getting her layoff orders. And it's just a sight to see for people who have not seen it as to how something can go so wrong. We thought that we will do a review of it and, of course, get insights and inputs from our audience. Really quickly, my name is Dorothy Mashburn. I'm an interview and salary negotiation coach, and I help people optimize their compensation package. And part of that is also understanding how severance and layoffs work and how to secure most salary and perks in that layoff period as well. And so Brittany Pietsch's video is definitely a lot of lessons learned for a lot of people. Hi, Courtney. Glad you are here. Happy to have you. Let me add you to stage. There we
Hi.
go. Hi.
Sorry for the
Hi.
wait.
No worries. No worries at all. So we'll I guess do our video and let people catch it in the recording, or as they join, they can come and uh, provide their insights. I was just done introducing myself, so over to you, Courtney, to introduce yourself.
Yes, hi, I'm Courtney Page. I own a career coaching and development firm called Resume. I also have a podcast, which is how I met Dorothy, and that is called also Resume the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And yeah, I'm a career and executive coach. So we saw this video that I think everybody's seen at this point, and we were like, oh, we should probably talk about this and see what people are saying. And also, I'd love to hear your Dorothy's an amazing negotiator. She helps people, especially women, with negotiations. So we kind of just thought, let's have a conversation.
Yeah, yeah. I guess if therefore, like the five people who haven't seen it, we can just do a quick recap of the video before we dive in. So there's like a 9-minute video on TikTok which shows Brittany she's a 27-year-old account manager on Cloudflare. Cloudflare is a tech company. They provide cloud-based networking and cybersecurity services. And she's talking to two HR people. And in the video, we only see Brittany, and the two HR people, we hear her say their names is Rosie and Dom, I believe, and they're just hopping on this Zoom call with Brittany, and they're saying, we've decided to part ways with you. And there are a few things to note that Brittany immediately says is she's never met these two people before. They are telling her that because of her performance, they're able to they're parting ways with her, but they're not able to give any specifics. And they also state that they don't know why her manager has told her that she was doing a great job. And then Dom does make a point of saying that this is part of a collective performance assessment of her and her peers, not just her. So that's kind of the recap of the video. In case you haven't seen it, it's all over TikTok. It's now on Twitter and every X and everywhere else. So definitely something that piqued our interest, being in career coaching, Courtney, and me being in interview and salary negotiation. So over to you, I guess. What were your initial thoughts when you saw this video? And of course, we want to keep this as conversational as possible. And if somebody wants to join, they're absolutely welcome to provide their insights.
Yeah. So I think the initial reaction was just that. Well, first of all, sorry, I'm having a bit of reverb coming, so I don't
Okay.
know if that's just me, but I'll try to ignore it. But in any case, my initial reaction was I completely understood where Brittany was coming from. It seemed almost before she got on that it was she didn't know who those two people were, that she didn't have a working relationship with them. Um, so I understand right off the bat just feeling like this is weird, and having kind of like your guard up a bit. And then, ooh, I don't know what that is. Sorry, I'm going to mute myself and you keep going, Dorothy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Do you think if I mute myself, it'll be easier for you while you're talking? Let me try that.
Okay. Can I hear? Okay, that is better. Yeah, I don't know. I was getting squeaks too. Okay, so yes. So one, that she didn't know who she was talking to, and also that she had already gotten wind that there were layoffs happening. So I think if you watch the beginning, she says it very quickly, like in a caption. My other, work colleagues have been called into like 10-15 minute meetings. So she kind of had a very short amount of time to prepare, but still kind of had an idea of what was coming. So that said, I understand that she was, kind of semi-prepared for the worst, but also not really. And coming up against two people that she didn't even know who were about to, let her go, is obviously very upsetting. And then my other initial reaction was how HR really didn't handle it very well. And I think that was everybody's reaction, right? I think everybody's like, why, why did they handle it the way they did? And I think, they didn't handle it well. I think it could have been discussed, and the information could have been a lot relayed to her in a much more, factual way, as opposed to this like, well, we can't get into it right now. This is kind of, they kind of kept skirting around it, saying like, this isn't the meeting for that. And Brittany pulls up this great point, was like, if not now, then when? Like when I'm not working at the company. So that is a great point. And I think the one like big thing that people haven't really tapped into, at least that I have not seen, is this like employment at will, right? So most of the time, most companies, when you sign on and you get that offer letter and everything, within that onboarding, all those contracts and the onboarding process, there's usually an employment at will contract, which essentially, depending on the state you're in and depending on, state laws, that's essentially like the company can pretty much fire you for any reason. So I am willing to bet, and I don't know this, but I'm willing to bet that Cloudflare had that, right? Had that in place. So HR can't really be thrown too far under the bus for actually letting her go, because most likely she was employment at will. So they don't actually really need a reason. Wrongful termination is a different situation, where if you're, sexually harassed or something like that, and then you're terminated based on some repercussion from something that was, very like outside the bounds of like, propriety in the workplace. But employment at will, like you do sign kind of some of your rights away there. And I think that hasn't really been brought up. So I'm not taking any sides. I'm just saying like, this is probably something that hasn't been mentioned in regards to like their reasoning behind firing her or letting her go.
It kind of goes back to what you said in the beginning, right? How they handled it is the problem, not necessarily that whether or not they could have let her go, or whether they had the legal backing to say, okay, something is not going well here, and so we're letting you go. In fact, it's based on the legal side of things. It's likely, and I'm not in employment law, but probably they could have just said, we're not a fit and we're parting ways, versus saying performance, which then allowed her to open up the can of worms of saying, well, wait a second, nobody has told me that my performance is poor. So what are you guys talking about?
They said the opposite, where, she was getting all this great feedback on her performance, which I think was a huge underlying factor for her, emotional response, where it seemed very out of the blue. So yeah, I mean, to your point, that's a great point. Like they could have just said, it's not a cultural fit, or they could have just said like, we're doing a layoff, right? Like this is unfortunate. We're having restructuring, own the issue. Like we hired too many people. We can't pay for it right now. And unfortunately, like there is kind of this, last in, first out situation that a lot of companies will do. Or, and this is something else that she had mentioned, which HR had an opportunity, like, and it stinks that it like came down to this, but HR did have an opportunity to kind of like answer one of her concerns, which was that, she had all this great feedback from her manager, which is wonderful. She hadn't yet closed any accounts or any deals yet, right? So, okay, that's okay. She's new, but if the company is going to be doing layoffs, they're going to look at who's making the money. And it really just kind of comes down to a bottom line. And it doesn't, unfortunately, matter how great your attitude is or your performance has been if you're not actually like bringing in revenue. The company, it's not, this is going to sound bad, but it's not a charity, so they can't just kind of like keep you on if they're going to go under, right? So that is something HR could have tackled and said, like, you are doing a really great job and it's really unfortunate, but because you haven't actually closed anything, regardless of whether it's, those situations were a little bit out of your hands, the bottom line is you hadn't closed anything. And so we have to keep employees on that have brought in revenue. So it's not, to say that you're not doing a great job. It's just, unfortunately, the accounts that you had didn't close. So,
Yeah, I mean that is like we all know, right? Sales is brutal. Like you have to close, otherwise that's kind of like the lifeblood of the company. And you have to close, and regardless of what the situation is, you have to find a way to bring home the bacon. And that's unfortunately what she was saying. But I'm wondering why it was so wishy-washy. Like, why was the company not sure of saying exactly that? Like, it's not a culture fit. Yeah, there's a lot of activity, but you don't have results, and we pride ourselves on results. We need our employees to provide, like solid, concrete closes, and you didn't, and therefore we're letting you go. So why didn't they lean into that, you think?
I don't know. The only thing I can really think of is they were most definitely handed a file of people, to fire and to let go. And I was thinking about this. I'm like, I wonder, most people are blindsided by this, right? And in the moment, it's hard to kind of gather your, thoughts, especially if it comes very, if you're just totally unaware that it's going to happen. So I'm wondering if they just aren't used to having people kind of push back. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the people who are getting laid off might realize that these are just people who are just here to as a messenger, right? And they probably don't have the answers. So what is the point of pushing back, kind of? So I think that maybe they just never had anybody, not never, but maybe most of the time don't have to deal with pushback. Yeah, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with you. It has to be a lack of preparation and lack of providing the talking points to the HR team from the management or whoever was making the decisions of the layoffs, to have like a solid plan of like, these are our talking points, these are our, like if there's pushback, this is what you fall back on. There wasn't any kind of training for Rosie and Dom. I think they just got caught, unfortunately, and they're getting a lot of flack on social media as well, unfortunately, because truly they were just the messengers who was trying to, and I think they did a pretty good job. And I don't want to be like on the side of the big bad corporation, but considering what they were handed, they showed empathy. And I think Rosie even said, let me get back to you. But bad preparation, not enough talking points, and just poorly handled, layoff project.
Yeah, and I think Brittany's approach that, like, I'm going to get laid off anyway, so why not stand up for myself? Like, I love that approach. I do think at some point you don't want to burn bridges, even if you're really pissed off in the moment. Like, you don't want to burn bridges. So there is kind of, and I'm not saying that she did, I'm just saying, like, if you are at some point in the same scenario, like, you always kind of want to keep in mind, like, let's just not go overboard with the aggression, right? Because aggression doesn't need to happen, regardless of how upset you are or whatnot, especially when she did completely realize that these people were just the messengers. So taking, they kind of became like this sort of punching bag, which, again, like, they signed up for, like, they knew that they were just the messengers and they could have been prepared for a reaction like this, which is a legitimate totally like understandable reaction. So I think it was just, being both parties getting caught off guard and just kind of both reacting in ways that the other one didn't expect, right? And they are getting a lot of flack, and it is, unfortunate because they were really just the messengers. And if you've ever seen Up in the Air, that's actually like his job. It's George Clooney. It's from like 2009. It was one of like Anna Kendrick, everybody, yeah, it was like one of her breakout roles, and it's a great movie, but that's his job. Like he goes around like laying people off, and it's really interesting. So, it'd be kind of interesting to have people who have seen this kind of like employee, side of it on TikTok and like modern day TikTok to like this, produced movie about just this, like just like that's somebody's job. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just unfortunate, and I hope that Brittany finds somewhere that like values her and that she enjoys. And I would also just say, if anybody does get, because I've had a lot of people have been laid off lately, right? Like there's been massive layoffs, and I've had a lot of people in my network who have been laid off multiple times a year. Like it's just been awful. And all I would say is it's hard not to take it personally. So if you need to take it personally for a day or two, go for it and let that like ride. And then I would say just come to some kind of peace with it, in knowing that you don't want to be anywhere that doesn't want you, right? So yes, of course, you need the paycheck and the benefits and all of the things, right? But at the end of the day, it's more beneficial for yourself and for your outlook on other jobs to really view it more as like, okay, this is an unexpected opportunity to then go ahead and look for something that is available now, that maybe if you were to stay in this job, if it didn't lay you off, that wouldn't have been available when you decided to leave in a year because of whatever, so just try to reframe that to something a little bit more positive and not so bleak.
Yeah, that is a very good point. There is it's very sad, and it's very demoralizing to your confidence at the moment. But you also have to go back to the cliches and the sayings of rejection is redirection. What are you comfortable with right now that you've been sort of jettisoned out of your comfort zone? So now you have to take action for what you really want to do in life. It's time for self-reflection. Absolutely, all of that is true. Although right now it may not be feeling like that for Brittany or anybody else who's in that position, but it's such a good point to think about it and reframe it in our minds to say what's next and what can be done better for me, for myself.
Yeah, and what, I guess from a negotiation standpoint, I mean, like, what did she do well? What did Brittany do well? And what did HR do well? And then what would you say were like 2 points or a couple points for each that like could have been handled better from just purely negotiation?
Yeah. So I think let me answer the question of what could she do with this, right? So first of all, instead of getting emotional about it, and she's a 27-year-old. At 27, I did not have this composure, like, or confidence, right? So kudos to her for how she handled it. But what she could have done was taken a breath and said to herself, what can she negotiate? What can she get out of this? And she can even do that now because she has a lot of leverage because it's viral. Like she has the attention of the CEO, Mr. Prince. Oh, I don't know his last name. Well, is Prince something? I don't know his name. What is his name? I'm trying to remember. Um, anyway, he's on X now because he's also noticed it and said that he doesn't think it was handled well. But she has a lot of room to negotiate. So one point is don't accept a severance package on the spot. Take time to go back and say, can I have 48 hours to review it? And then you can negotiate. So if it takes 6 months to negotiate, to find a new job, ask for 6 months of pay, right? Like don't be without pay while you're asking for some, because they, again, she makes a point of this because Cloudflare hired poorly, did not account for how many people they would need. So it's their mistake in a way. So she could always use that to say, well, you made a mistake. so you're going to pay me for the 6 months. She can negotiate for a full bonus payout if there was a bonus that she wouldn't get because she is now laid off. She could ask for, of course, insurance benefits. She can ask them to pay for unused sick pays, accelerated vesting of any stock options, RSUs. So there's a ton of things that she can negotiate because this is the leverage point, right? A lot of companies, even though it doesn't seem like it in the Cloudflare video, don't want that reputation out there that they're a poor employer because right, they don't want that reputation because they're not going to be able to attract good talent then. So you have a lot of leverage. Maybe you can even like hint that you're not going to go out there and badmouth the company if they do X, Y, and Z for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It'll be interesting, if there's ever a follow-up to hear like where she ends up or what ended up, how their relationship concluded. But yeah, I would love to know that. Dorothy, do you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I guess I was going to ask you, Courtney. So, if somebody like Brittany is now looking for a job, and, I've heard that a lot of people have reached out to provide support for her and offer job offers. But what can she do next from a recruitment perspective? What is like her best 2 or 3 things that she can do? Like, do you have any opinion or insights for her or someone like her?
Yeah, I mean, if you're laid off, once again, like take a couple days or a week or whatever to like just feel the pain. I think sometimes we just need to do that. And depending on your personality and how you deal with that kind of stuff, some people need to like mourn it for a minute. And some people are like, whatever, I'm moving on. So figure out what you need to do to kind of just come to terms with it and like let it go. And then I would say, go on LinkedIn, start to, look at all of your things, your LinkedIn profile, how approachable is it? How many connections do you have and all of that stuff, how your resume looks and any cover letters. Start looking at those, you can make job alerts on LinkedIn for any job alert that, you might be interested in. And also I think, it's a great and this might also be cliche, but I think it's a great opportunity to, take a step back and think like, what do I actually want to do? Now I have this like, kind of like carte blanche to go in any direction I want, especially if you're Brittany's age, like she's 27. That's like the beginning of your career. Like you have, a couple years, from assuming that she I'm just making a big assumption that, she graduated at 22 and got a job immediately, who knows if she did, but, she has those 5 years. It seems like a lot when you're in it, but like, she could go anywhere. Like she doesn't need to stay an account exec, she doesn't need to do exactly what she was doing at Cloudflare. So I would just say, take a step back and figure out like, what do I really want to do? Is there something different, and give that a try. And you can always do some contract work, as a recruiter, there's a lot of contract recruiting jobs. So if you're a recruiter and you ever get laid off, you can look into contract recruiter jobs. Or, if you're if you have any technical, savviness at all, there's a lot, Fiverr and Upwork, you can go on and do some freelance work as you figure out like what your big next step is. Also like working with a coach like you or I'm not plugging us, I'm just saying it can bring a lot of clarity. If you really, really don't know like where you want to end up, that's like people's big problem, right? Like once you know where you're going, then you can figure out a way to get there, right? But if you have no idea where you want to go, you're never going to figure out how to get there because you don't know where you're going. So sometimes it can help to reach out to a mentor, friends, family, a coach, whatever, to really kind of gain clarity there. But I would say use it as an opportunity. So, get some freelance work in there, maybe, test the waters in a new industry by doing some freelance work. Or, you can also just look at competitors of Cloudflare, and I'm sure, maybe they would be interested in her. Maybe they wouldn't, given like, the scenario, but yeah, you can always look at, your company competitors. And LinkedIn, Indeed, I prefer LinkedIn for jobs, but and work those connections as opposed to networking. So anybody that you feel remotely comfortable reaching out to, reach out to them. Anybody that you feel like weird about reaching out to, reach out to them. And anybody that you just are like, I'm never reaching out to them, then don't reach out to them. You're going to feel weird about reaching out to people, like especially if you have any introversion in your system at all. But especially if it's like just through a LinkedIn, it's, what's the worst that can happen? They just don't get back to you. Who cares? So that's what I would say. Did that answer your question? I just talked a lot.
No, yeah, absolutely, it did. And so, if anyone is listening and they need to take a first step, so of course, Courtney and I are both available on LinkedIn, on Instagram as well. So please reach out. And there's a lot of free stuff that we both provide. So I have a free LinkedIn checklist that you can download today and get your LinkedIn up and ready. And help yourself, right? Like, get all of the freebies and take action, and like, do your 2 days of feeling bad. Absolutely take the time, and then take action. Like, action is going to help you get back and be confident, and get to your next destination.
Yeah, and I have a free resume writing guide on my website. So resume-careers.com. It should pop up, and it's just a download, a free resume writing guide to help you out. And there are templates on there too. If you're like, my resume looks ridiculous and you want a new pretty resume, you can download the template. So yeah, that's not free. That's like 10 to 25 bucks, depending on what resume you want. But the resume writing guide is free. So go get it. Like Dorothy said, like, there's so much free information. There's so many free resources, like, use them all. So yeah. Oh, you're muted.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess that concludes it, right? This was a quick lunch hour take on Brittany Pietsch and her viral video. And thank you, Courtney, for being a partner in crime in dissecting some of this.
Yeah, thank you. And best of luck to Brittany. And also, even though it might not be popular opinion, best of luck to the HR folks too. Best of luck to everybody.
Absolutely. Well, have a great lunch, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks.